I just needed a build to speed farm mercs with, but this thing has turned out pretty nicely. This Absolution of inspiring Elementalist is centered around a single item, Elegant Hubris. Now this jewel converts notables on the tree into brand new nodes, at the cost of losing all small passives in radius. On this patch, I essentially see three archetypes of Elegant Hubris builds that are absurdly efficient. Firstly, there are Axiom Mortem stackers. These builds tend to be in the form of Ray Zombie following Arcanist brand or Corpse Detonation builds like Mob Mischief or DD. Secondly, Eternal Separation builds stack power charges for increased energy shield, usually resulting in 48% increased ES per notable. That is really crazy because this is PoE 1, not PoE 2. And Ephemeral Edge and Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice are the obvious contenders here. The former, especially as a masterful form Slayer with tons of charges. Thirdly, and what this build leverages, is Slum Lord. 80% increased minion damage doesn't seem too crazy, but for my setup with Ashes of the Stars as well, this increase is 3.75 times as effective for Absolution of Inspiring, which has special scaling with minion damage. In essence, that part of my tree grants 1500% increased damage, similar to what Mamba builds achieve with low tolerance stacking, except I can attack, multiple times. It follows similarly in other ways to my previous self-cast FR setup, using Coiling Whisper for Soul Eater and Elementalist Golem scaling to basically cheat the game. While the budget for this is probably just under a mirror, I believe it performs very well for its relative investment. And aside, you might ask yourself, isn't this just poor man Pulsaron's Storm Call? And to that I'd say, why yes, I am poor. So you should obviously, give me all your subs, all your oneers saved for the strip club, all those things. And in actuality, yes, there's a lot of concepts taken from his build, especially with the Mercenary. Balance's patch, I believe, has made it so that many self-casters will tend to gravitate towards similar pathways, but I do think there's some really interesting details as far as like minion scaling and how I want to build this thing in particular that make this thing quite unique, efficient, and most importantly, still stupidly fun. First things first, let's talk about the padding and path of building so we can get that out of the way. The biggest thing is, I was just testing if I could survive a lot of one-shots in the game, and yeah, I can, if I enable this stuff, which is the Arcanist brand Frost Shield Sigil setup. Really great to have. I mean, it's really quick to generate, and it's, just good to do. It's one button, right? You don't have a lot of other buttons to press on this build. There's a couple of other things, but for the most part, I think these defenses are very solid. It's a suppression cap build, ton of ES, it's CI base, it's got Incandescent Heart, and yeah, and like those things also factor into your damage. I do think the uptime on it is fairly good, especially when you do need it, which is mostly on bosses. Let's talk about the tree first. Ascendancy wise, I'm taking Shaper of Winter, Flames, Liege, and Bastion. Let's talk about each one. So, Shaper of Flames is great. I think it's one of the strongest nodes in the game right now. Obviously, it doesn't work against, like, I don't know, Shaper's Ghost or things that can't be targeted. But in general, this kind of fizz mitigation is very good, especially in soft core. Over here, I have Shaper of Winter. A lot of people like to pair this with the min 10 mastery that chills from your all hits, always reduce action by at least 10%. But I think your hits are pretty big on this character that you don't need to do that. The hits themselves tend to chill quite strongly, especially when it's paired with this mastery over here for non-damaging element scaling. Third, Liege of the Primordial. Pretty self-explanatory. I think like it's just, golems are OP. If I disable my golems, I lose a lot. And it's not even showing all the golems. I didn't config it all the way in, but yeah, you lose a lot. Most importantly, you lose a lot of AoE, right? I go from 5.1 to 5.9, and that's actually really hard to push the high tier radius, and I do value that. I think both for clear and for single target overlaps. Lastly, Bastion of Elements. This is how you get Reflect Immunity on the build. It's also quite efficient for this particular setup because I am ES based, but I'm playing Incandescent Heart, so I don't have a gigantic pool. It's only 6k. But there's Frost Shield Sigil. But in general, I think it's pretty solid to go for. Especially when you're taking Shaper of Flames, you run Countless Binding on your Merc, it's really great. Okay, let's talk about the rest of the tree. So this is an Ostentation tree running triple cluster, and basically you tattoo everything. Now, in the ideal scenario, I tattoo each of these to increase ES nodes instead of like res nodes, and I don't know, I have like Hinder, Mana Regen, whatever. But I'm poor, and I kind of want to save money. For the next build, which is my Merc build. I've been kind of scaling up and stuff, so I kind of just want to save it, but you really want to be running increased ES tattoos. They're really strong on this, especially since you don't have int ES scaling, right? You do have global defensive scaling from your golems, which is really great, but even like a 3% node would be sizable, almost like 0.5% more, right? About 50 more ES per 3% tattoo you go for. Primordial Bond. I do run one of the more expensive ones for renewal, just for a little bit of regen, because I do want to skip Spiritual Aid. This doesn't really do anything additional for your Absolution. It is good if you want to skill like Explode, or and that sort of thing, but nah, I don't know about it. There's actually a lot to want to cover on this tree. So the crit stuff is really efficient. The shield mastery is just insane for crit casters. You do get a bit of block, but it's not that important. I personally don't feel like you actually interact with monsters that often. I'm crit capped on this thing. If you want to be more crit capped on mapping, you could take this stuff, and then you could take some charge stuff. If you could go for charge generation from replica Victarios as well to get endurance charges, or regular for frenzies, I didn't find it to be that consistent, so don't have that for now. A rune graft over here for global defenses. Again, I don't care about the reduced attributes because I'm ostentation, right, from this thing. And then conversion off this, and then also conversion off a Watcher's Eye. I run a melding setup. I like to get these AoE nodes. This is really great because if I can drop one node elsewhere and take this if I'm doing things like Abyss or what else has chests in it, you know. Instant leech over here. I do like Ghost Reaver, doubles your ES leech rate. I play regen as well from Golem. This doesn't disable that, only disables recharge. This is kind of the coup de grace of the tree. You can see that this jewel is pretty good. 138 mil, estimating 3 overlaps. You can get 4. Can never get 5 unless on big targets. Look at this. Goes down to 40 mil if I take that out, alright? So the scaling off this Elegant Hubris is insane, and it's really good for ostentation. There's a bunch to use. You're not locked into this number. There's only 3 divines, so I bought this one, but there's actually better ones to go for in this location. There's one that's pretty good in this location because it pairs well with a Impossible Escape for Pain Attunement. And you can also play... you could play it here and lose the golem nodes. Some people like to play it here as well. And the last location would be down here if you want to skip suppression. Those are kind of the main locations I look for ostentation. Duelist actually has the best ones, but it's way too far for us. Something to note, this last stuff. This wheel serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it gives you +1 max res for your Sapphire Flask for melding. Number 2, it gives you this mastery. And because you're a Mage Blood setup, all the flash generation that comes from this, even though it's capped out at 10 charges per second, will all go towards Bottle Faith. So your Bottle Faith uptime in boss encounter is actually quite good. You could use other flasks, one of the Prophet, what's it called, the Steel Mage Uber Series flask. I was already at the end. But I think this mastery is really worth taking. It just feels absolutely amazing. And the scaling is good too. It's the equivalent of taking like, you know, these 2 or getting another jewel suffix, which is expensive. As far as rare jewels go, I'm only running 3 prop, right? That dual wield doesn't do anything because, again, I'm poor. This build, even though it's expensive, is not as expensive as it could be. Not even close. And it's, you know, pretty nice. I think in terms of like real config for defense, oh yeah, I forgot. So this isn't calced, right? I think safeguarding is actually insane. It's tanky enough. Let's just put it that way. It's not this, but it's also not as squishy as like this. It kind of depends on what the scenario is. And a lot of times just like won't be taking damage, and sometimes it'll take a lot just because of how golems work and that sort of thing. But in general, I think it's like viable for all content and stuff like that. Skill gem wise, it's contentious. So if I drop these 2 things, you see I'm down to 5.3 radius. And you think to yourself, oh, 0.5 radius, does that even matter? And my answer to that is I have no idea. But it is really good to have more radius. I think it gives you a slight chance for 5 overlaps on things like Maven Brain or the big new bosses. Not that that really matters. But AoE to me is always better. Absolution gets more radius with levels, so I do push the levels past 30. I run this in power even though it's not technically good support, only at 19.2%. Cascade, Echo, really, really great. And then Inspiration is just nice to have because your mana cost does get pretty high. I'm relying entirely on mana regen for my sustain. Frostblink is linked with Hex Touch, Temporal Chains, and Spell Echo. Spell Echo changes into Orb of Storms for single target bosses when I really want to, you know, just not be casting Frostblink all the time for movement. And I run this ring combination of Coiling Whisper and a mega reduced skill effect duration ring over here. The reason I do this at 98% and play Hex Touch is because I have Ashes of the Stars, which gives quality to like everything, including quality to Temporal Chains, which means I have more duration of Temp Chains. If I ran a different amulet, and you can run a different amulet, but this amulet's like good. It gives you, you know, some damage. Yeah, it gives you like, it's a good amount of damage. It gives you a little bit of quality scaling for golems as well. So that's like all defensives. I don't think it increased my AoE at the current threshold of stuff, but it's not bad. Plus it gives you the +1. The other option, I think the better option is to play a Simplex amulet or that sort of thing. A +4 or +8 amulet, both would be insane. You can go min charges, charge generation. I would say even like a defensive set, Utmost isn't bad. I'm trying to think of what else there could be. You could overcap your crit, go power charge scaling, and also play Maralene's. It's actually possible with this because it's a Sandstorm based setup, but yeah. Anyways, I think Ash is okay, but it does make getting enough reduced curse duration kind of hard. But I bought this ring to just to fuck around with and end up being really good. 3 golems here in one hand. On the other hand, I have my last golem and a self-cast Enfeeble. Please don't crash right now. Oopsies. I have a self-cast Enfeeble and a self-cast Frostblink. This is a second Frostblink, not Wintry Blast. I like to have the extra instant movement skill that's really good to press. And Enfeeble itself is used to enable a Balance of Terror. Now this can be swapped out for a Temporal Chains Balance of Terror as well. for action speed, risk maps, things like that. But in the most part, I just like playing with this. I'm doing Merc Rush. This gives me crit immunity and a lot of crit multi as well. Some people like the LE weakness one, which gives you Fizz As, but that one's expensive and I think worse. Over here, Arcness, Brand, Sigil, Frost Shield went over this, and then I'm running an Enlighten 3 with my 3 kind of core auras: Discipline, Purity of Ice, Flesh and Stone. You can see Discipline actually isn't that crazy, but I just like having an additional pool on here. There weren't great options in my opinion here, because you do get Wrath and Zealotry from your Merc basically for free. You could play Herald of Purity as well. It's not bad. And it does give you a good amount of damage. I think it's somewhere around like, yeah. And you can scale this further with like Elementalist and stuff, but I just don't think it's that worth doing unless you're going to go Power Charge scaling, drop the Calling Whisper, and then play +1 Circle of the physical 1 rings. As far as my Merc goes, it's running... Well, we can go through the Merc gear set first, because it'll be easier. I have this Wrath Wand here. A lot of this is taken from Pulsatron. I'm running a block shield that also gives him like endurance charges, a little bit of regen, but mostly sapping when blocking. Blood Price is kind of like reverse Calling Strike. The regen's really good because, you know, it's bad. Doriani's is obvious, non-corrupted, and poor. I'm running an Enfeeble Southbound. Southbound I think is solid in general, gives you res, gives you increased life. Nothing wrong with this. Dawn Strider is just for making sure it doesn't die to reflect, but there's other good booty options, especially like Cam's Roots, not bad. Defiance of Destiny with Whispers of Doom is really great. It's just good in general, obviously, because your defenses need to be really good on your Merc. And then I'm running a Mirrored Cogwork Ring for minus Lightning Res over here, Cold Chaos, and then I have my leftover Rarity Lightning Ring, which was for my Gravevine setup. I don't care, because Gravevine's bad for this build. I kill things in like a 20-meter radius, and Gravevine has a 3-meter radius. Then finally Cam's Binding, great with Elementalist. My gear, and here's probably the most detailed part. This is a self-craft. I bought a +1 spell skill wand with kind of good base crit. It's a 9.5, I believe, Horn. I used crit essences, and then I aug fizz. I originally had crit multi as a suffix. I was gonna get double crit multi, but got lazy, got the mana regen, called it a day. Mana regen's good, right? You need it. The shield. I went +1 here as well. Now, this shield is no longer good for me, actually. I probably should be swapping to something else, just because I end up putting in power in, but I was really, really keen on making sure I hit the right like radius for Absolution of Inspiring, so I went +1, but mostly I like to have my prefixes that increase CS. You can also play a minion shield in this case, the minion base, and play like, yeah, I think that exists, right? Like minion damage. Does it? Shield, energy shield. Where are you? Yeah, you can play the minion shield and go minion damage and increase the ES off that, but I don't think it's like crazy or anything. Titanium's good. Benchcraft Suppress, multi-mod with res. Sandstorm Visage, insane. There's a lot of good corruptions to get over here. Socket of Reservation would be good. Power Charge would be good. Yeah. Incandescent, AoE minion. I didn't know this. Pulsatron told me this, but plus AoE gems also applies to Spell Cascade. And that's really good, because Spell Cascade gets 1% less area effect per level, right? So, or like every 2 levels, I guess. So basically it changes the AoE for this. And like the penalty is bad, right? So if you can always reduce the AoE, then it's super, super good. You can see if hypothetically if I was able to hit level 7 on this, I guess it doesn't matter. But there's thresholds for AoE, so that's why I went for plus AoE instead of like plus duration or plus gems. Gloves, just ES base. I Eldritch crafted the suffixes, then bold implicits. You need that max 2 cold res hit melding cap, where you need to run another rare jewel. Benchcraft suppress. And then boots, I actually went for hybrid. The reason I go for hybrid on boots as opposed to gloves is because boots don't really care as much. You can't really run 3 ES prefixes on boots because you do need to get movement speed as well, right? So the net ES value will always be lower, so I went for the hybrid base here. Intelligence does nothing, unfortunately, but yeah, that is what it is. Ashes, Claws the Magpie, that's the annoyance. It just takes this node, that's why that's that. Calling Whisper, self-explanatory, Wrath effect is nice. Over here, I got the Mega skill duration, curse thing here, yeah, and then a Mage Blood. Ball Faith. Flask setup is pretty standard for melding. It's an elemental flask, a bismuth flask to cope for melding stuff, a quartz flask give me more suppression, reduce curse effect, and then one more, it's a diamond flask here for LE res. I think I might switch this out for different things, but for now it's pretty solid. Jewel-wise, Heart Destruction Jewels, these give me even more AoE. Again, I just love AoE. Like, Absolution already has a better base AoE than Stormcall, so it just feels really good to play. I mentioned the large clusters already, they're the golden cluster. Storm Shroud has Avoid Ailments when paired with the Avoid Shock Flask over here. A Watcher's Eye gives me... Actually, this isn't the Watcher's Eye I'm running. The Watcher's Eye I'm running is, and I'll pull it out right now, real quick, in like a second or two. I'm actually playing a Conversion Watcher's Eye right now. But I can't find it. Why is it not here? Oh, it's because I didn't migrate properly. So I migrated gear, but in Path of Building, it migrates the tree separately from that. So the watches I'm actually running, which will also increase my numbers, is this one, which gives me even more damage. Yeah. And Arcane Surge and Conversion. So it helps out my Conversion, puts me at 150 mil. Yeah, that feels right. An Eminence with CB immunity. This is the cheapest jewel for CB immune that I can find. Elegant Hubris and Bounce of Terror. Yeah, this seems sweet. Also gives me Arcane Surge, so I can probably click that in the config. I don't know where it is. Oh, I guess it already takes it from me because I have Zealotry. Anyways, yeah, that's the build. Super, super fun to play. I mean, had a great time with this thing so far. It's just been absolutely amazing. I think I might end up playing this for like an extra day or two while I farm up for my merc. But for now, yeah, this is the character. Hope to see you guys soon.